Hello everyone. I am really happy to see you again on our Gurugetara program with another science lesson. So, today we are going to continue our lesson on pressure, unit 15. In the previous lesson, we have talked about pressure, we have learned how to calculate pressure. I think you might remember. I am just recalling what we have done in our previous lesson. Yeah. So, using the formula force divided by area, we can calculate pressure, and also we have talked about liquid pressure and identified the special features of liquid pressure, and we also learned how to calculate liquid pressure using the formula P equals H rho g, and we identified some instances where we make use of transmission of pressure through liquids. Yeah. So, these things we have already done in our lesson 1. Today in lesson 2, we are going to talk about air pressure and flotation. Yeah. So, before going to talk about air pressure, let us pay our attention on some pictures. Look at the picture. You see a person is drinking something using a straw. This is something we do in day to day life also sometimes. So, will the liquid just enter the straw here? No, there should be a force. There should be a force which forces the liquid into the straw. That is why it goes up along the straw and finally to our mouth. Okay, let us find it out, the force which sends the liquid along the tube. Yeah. So, I want you to try this at home. What you have to do is take a glass and fill that with water, and then place a cardboard on it and invert the glass filled with water, and you will notice that the cardboard stays without falling. So, how come that happens? Okay, so, once you learn about the pressure, you will find out the answer. Yeah, I think this is also something familiar to you, especially when we want to hang something on a glass surface, on a tile surface, we use this type of rubber suckers. Yeah. So, this is also something caused by the atmospheric pressure. Okay. Go the next one. What's the cause of the things that we observed? Yeah, by this time you already know that is the atmospheric pressure which causes all these things. Yeah. So, let us go back to these slides again and now see whether we can explain. Okay. Now, here when the person suck from the end of the straw, the pressure inside the straw decreases, but the atmospheric pressure outside is much greater. So, it forces the water or the liquid that we drink into the straw. So, as a result the liquid or what is the thing we drink goes up along the straw. Yeah. Now, here the cardboard stays like that without falling for some time, then there should be a force which acts upwards on the cardboard and which supports the weight of the water and the glass. Yeah. So, where does this force come from? That also come from the air pressure. Yeah. Now, you see, when we press a rubber sucker in this way into a place, this air goes out. Now, inside the rubber sucker is almost a vacuum, but outside air pressure is much greater that holds the sucker in position. So, now you see, in this way there are instances where we make use of air pressure, meanwhile there are instances where there are natural phenomena caused by air pressure. Okay. So, then how do you show that air pressure is there? There are several activities we can do to demonstrate air pressure. We talk about one activity here. So, you can try many other activities at home because you are very much free home these days. So, you can try different other activities, you can try this one also, but you need a U-tube. Yeah. So, this is what you have to do. Take a U-tube and fill it with water. Yeah, you can now see a U-tube filled with water. Yeah, mark the initial water level on both arms. You can see that we have to mark the initial water level on both arms of the U tube. Then let us see what we have to do next. Now, what we have to do is we have to connect an inflated balloon to one side of the U tube as shown in the diagram. Yeah. So, as you connect the balloon, what will you see? Yeah, think what you see. Okay, let us see what you see. You will see that water level goes up from the other side. Actually, you will see that water goes out of the U tube. So, now what does this show us? This show us that because of the pressure that the balloon applies on the water column goes up from the other side and goes out. So, then this simple activity shows us that air can also exert pressure on things in contact with air. Okay. So, now we have learned that liquid pressure increases as we go deeper into a liquid. As we go deeper into a liquid, pressure increases. We have learned that. So, what do you think? What do you think about air pressure as we go deeper in air? Now, let us say that you are at the top of a mountain and you come down. So, it is like you are going deeper into air. So, now what will happen to the air pressure? Will it increase or decrease? Yeah, I think you all know this by experience, pressure increases. And yeah, now you see another question on the screen. What happens to the air pressure as we go up through air? What do you think? Sometimes you might have experienced this. Now, think that you go to upcountry. Sometimes you experience a pop-in action in your ears. This is due to the decrease in the air pressure. So, then our system tries to balance it. That is why we experience something like that. Yeah, even in the picture you can see that air pressure decreases as we go up through air. This is similar to liquid pressure. This is similar to liquid pressure in a way, because we have learned that as we go deeper into a liquid, liquid pressure increases. Now, in this way, as we go deeper in air also, the air pressure increases. Yeah, let us go to the next one now. How much is the air pressure? Roughly we can take it as 100,000 pascals. In other words, if I tell you, it is like force of 100,000 Newton acting on an area of 1 square meter. Now, if I further tell you, it is equivalent to the pressure exerted by 10 cars kept on each other on 1 square meter. Let us see how to explain this. One car is 1000 kilogram. So, if we take the weight of a car, then you have to multiply that by acceleration due to gravity. So, which is 10 meters a second squared. So, then weight of one car will be 10,000 Newton. As there are 10 cars, then 100,000 Newtons. When you place 10 cars like that on top of each other on 1 square meter, then pressure will be 100,000 Newtons per square meter. So, that is why I said that the atmospheric pressure is roughly equal to 100,000 pascals. This is like the pressure exerted by 10 cars kept on each other on 1 square meter. Yeah. Okay. Now, we are going to learn how to measure the atmospheric pressure, because measuring is important. Then we can get a better idea about the quantity that we talk about. Yeah. So, to measure the atmospheric pressure, we are using devices called barometers, and there are different types of barometers. What are the types of barometers? You get mercury barometers and also aneroid barometers. So, these are the two types of barometers that we are going to study here. First, we talk about mercury barometers. So, let us go to the next part of the lesson now. It is about mercury barometers. Now, let us see how to make a mercury barometer. Yeah, take a glass tube of about 1 meter, fill it with mercury, then we have to invert it in a trough of mercury. Yeah. So, you can see the arrangement in the next slide. So, then this is how it will look like once we arrange it. Okay, then let us see how to get an idea about the atmospheric pressure using the mercury barometer. Look at the arrangement. You can see that mercury in the trough is exposed to the atmosphere, it is exposed to outside. So, when the atmospheric pressure acts on it, the mercury level will change. Now, think that the mercury level goes up. So, that shows that atmospheric pressure has increased. If the mercury level drops, that shows that the atmospheric pressure has decreased. Okay, let us go to the next one. So, now we have a doubt. So, why do we use mercury in a barometer? You know, it is not easy to find also. So, sometimes you might think, so why can't we go for a liquid like water? Yeah, instead of going for mercury. So, what do you think? Yeah, we use mercury because it is much denser than water. As it is much denser than water, we can produce the particular atmospheric pressure with a shorter mercury column. Yeah, that is what I have explained there. Let us go to the next one. Yeah, if we use water in a barometer, what is the length of the water column needed? So, I want you to do the calculation and find the answer. Yeah, so as I think you might be having a notebook and a pen ready with you. So, do the calculation and find it. Yeah, let us see how to do the calculation. So, we can calculate this using our formula P equals H rho g, as we have to find H here. Yeah, we can make H the subject of our formula, then it comes as P divided by rho g. We know P, that is equivalent to atmospheric pressure, which is 100,000 pascals, and density of water is 1000 kilograms a cubic meter, and acceleration due to gravity is 10. So, now we have 100,000 divided by 10,000, which is 10 meter. Now, you see, if we use water, what is the length of the water column we need? 10 meters. Is that practically easy to use? No. Now, think that if you are in the room, it will be like 3 times the height of the wall of the room. So, then that is not practically easy. That is why we go for mercury. But before thinking about it, just think that you are using a liquid 10 times denser than water. If you are using a liquid 10 times denser than water, what will be the length of the liquid column needed? Yeah, do the calculation and find it. Yeah, if you do the calculation, you will find out that will be 1 meter. Now, you see, when you use a liquid 10 times denser than water, you need a liquid column of 1 meter. So, which is 10 times less than what we call the length of the liquid column that we need when we go for water. But we are using mercury. What is the density of mercury? Yeah, it is like roughly 13,600 kilograms a cubic meter. So, then it is like 13.6 times denser than water. Then when we use water, if you need to go for a water column of 10 meters, when we use mercury, the length of the mercury column needed will be 13.6 times less than 10 meters. So, then roughly we can take it is like 76 centimeters. Okay. Let us go to the next one and see. What is the use of the vacuum at the end of the barometer? You know, if you look at the barometer again, you can see that there is a vacuum at the end of the barometer. So, what is the use of this vacuum? Now, you see, especially when the atmospheric pressure increases, mercury column rises. So, we get an idea about the increase in the atmospheric pressure by observing this. But now, what would happen if there were particles at the top? Would the mercury column be able to freely go up along the tube? What do you think? No, because the particles would put pressure on the mercury column. Yeah, now as there are no particles, because this is vacuum, so no particles, so no pressure is applied on the mercury column, so it can freely go up along the tube. That is the purpose of this vacuum that you find at the end of a mercury barometer. Yeah, let us go to the next one now. How do we measure the atmospheric pressure using a barometer? Already you know how to do that. Actually, we can't directly measure the atmospheric pressure. What I meant was, using the barometer, we can't measure the pressure in pascals. We can just measure the height of the mercury column only. So, if we observe an increase in the height of the mercury column, we know that the atmospheric pressure has increased. If we observe a decrease in the height of the mercury column, we know that atmospheric pressure has decreased. Yeah. So, that is what I have explained by measuring the height of the mercury column. Mercury column rises when the pressure is high and mercury column drops when the pressure is low. Let us go to the next one. What's the height of the mercury column at the sea level? I think you might know this, that is roughly 76 centimeters. So, I must tell you here, these are not like exact values, these values can vary, roughly it is like 76 centimeters. Yeah. How do we write the atmospheric pressure at the sea level in terms of the height of the mercury column? Yeah. So, I told you that using the mercury barometer, we can't directly measure the atmospheric pressure. So, we just measure the height of the mercury column. So, for our convenience, we can express that in terms of the height of the mercury column. So, at the sea level, we can write the atmospheric pressure as 76 centimeters of mercury. So, we have to mention the liquid here. Okay. Let us see the next one. How much should the atmospheric pressure exerted by a mercury column of 76 centimeters be roughly equal to? Yeah. Now, you know, when the atmospheric pressure acts on mercury, it goes to a particular height, and we learned that is like 76 centimeters. Then the pressure exerted by a mercury column of 76 centimeters should roughly be equal to how much? How much you think? Yeah. See what you thought was correct? Yeah, that is roughly equal to 100,000 pascals, the standard atmospheric pressure. Yeah. Let us see what the next one is. How do we show it through a calculation? Okay. So, then do the calculation. We are using P equals H rho g again. So, using that we can do the calculation. So, we have the formula P equals H rho g. Let us substitute the values. H is the height of the mercury column, which is 76 centimeters. As we have to take that in meters, we divide it by 100. Now, we go for rho, that is the density of mercury, which is 13,600 kilograms cubic meter, and we multiply that by acceleration due to gravity, which is 10 meters per second squared. Okay. As you do the calculation, you will get 103,360 pascals. Yeah. So, if you round off these to nearest 100,000, we get it as 100,000 pascals, which is the standard atmospheric pressure. Okay. Let us see what the next one is. Yeah. So, it is about the aneroid barometer. We call this the aneroid barometer as it has no liquid in it. Now, just think of the mercury barometer again. Yeah. So, we have to have a mercury column of about 76 centimeters, and it is immersed or it is inverted in a trough of mercury. If you think of the practical usage, so will that be easy for us? Now, think that you have to take it from place to place. Think that you are on a field study or a field trip, and then you have to sometimes record the environmental conditions or the atmospheric conditions. Think that you have to measure the atmospheric pressure. So, using the mercury barometer, can you do it? Yeah, you can do it, but I mean, then how can you easily take it? Is that easy to take it from place to place? No, it is not that easy. So, then it is not much portable, and also mercury is toxic, because if mercury spills, that can be problematic. Yeah. So, then to avoid this type of problems in the mercury barometer only, they have designed an aneroid barometer. there is no liquid inside, that is why we call this the aneroid barometer. I think you are familiar with this device, the aneroid barometer. Now, you can see that on the screen. So, in the next slide you can see the inside of an aneroid barometer. This is how the inside looks like. Okay. So, if you are using a measuring device like this, you need to always have something sensitive or something which changes according to the condition that we measure. Now, just think of a thermometer. So, using a thermometer we are measuring temperature. Based on the temperature, the liquid used in the bulb expands or contracts. So, likewise here also we need to have something sensitive to the changes in the atmospheric pressure. So, what do you find in the aneroid barometer which is sensitive to changes in the atmospheric pressure? You can see there is something called highly evacuated box. There is an evacuated box. What is meant by evacuated box? Is almost like a vacuum. There will be like fewer particles. Now, this stretches and squashes when the atmospheric pressure changes. This particular evacuated box stretches and squashes when the atmospheric pressure changes. If you carefully observe, you can see that there is a lever system connected to the box. So, when the evacuated box stretches or squashes, the lever system also moves and it can pull the chain. So, when it pulls the chain will move to the right side or the left side of the scale, showing an increase or a decrease in the atmospheric pressure. So, this is how we use the aneroid barometer to measure the atmospheric pressure, and when compared with the mercury barometer, it is much portable and is easier to use. Yeah. Let us see the next one. How does the aneroid barometer work? So, which I explained is there on the screen now. Much more portable than a mercury barometer. It has a partially evacuated box. It is connected to a dial by a set of levers and a light chain. Change in the atmospheric pressure stretches or squashes the box. The system of levers magnifies this movement. So, the pointer moves. When the pointer moves to the right side, so we can say that is an increase in the atmospheric pressure. When it moves to the left side, we can say that is a decrease in the atmospheric pressure. Applications of the atmospheric pressure. As usual, when we learn something, we need to think how that is related to our life situations. I mean, using what we have learned in the lesson, we should be able to make our life better, otherwise no point of learning. Now, if you really think about different things that you learn in different subjects, there will be many instances where that knowledge becomes useful and where that knowledge is put into practice. So, here also as we have talked about the air pressure, now we are going to identify some instances where we make use of the air pressure. Yeah, let us see what they are. So, here I show you like few instances, you can find out more instances where we make use of air pressure. Yeah, when we drink something using a straw, we make use of air pressure. So, already you know how this works. Now, when we suck from one end of the straw, the pressure inside the straw becomes low, but the greater atmospheric pressure outside pushes on the liquid. So, the liquid is forced into the straw and goes up along the straw. So, in this way, when we drink something using a straw, air pressure helps us. Now, let us go to the next use of the air pressure. Yeah, you can see a rubber sucker. You know the instances where we use rubber suckers. Yeah, so what we do is we press the rubber sucker into the place. As we do that, air goes out from inside. Now, inside is almost like a vacuum. There will be few air particles, but the greater atmospheric pressure outside can put lot of force on it and hold that in the position. So, now you see the air pressure helps in that way also. Now, let us go to the next use of the air pressure. is about the siphon. Now, I think you must have done this also when you are doing different things at home. You can take water to a lower place from a higher place in this way. Now, look at the points that I have given as A and B. Now, pressure at A is equal to the atmospheric pressure plus pressure of the water column. If you look at the point A, you can see that there is a water column above A. So, that water column applies pressure on it. Meanwhile, atmospheric pressure also acts on it. So, then the pressure at A can be taken as the sum of the atmospheric pressure and the pressure of the water column. But compared with A, there is less pressure at B, because pressure at B is equal to atmospheric pressure. So, because of the higher pressure at A, water is forced into the tube. So, water will start flowing along the tube and finally, it will enter the container placed at the lower level. So, this is how the siphon works. There also we make use of air pressure. Okay. Now, we have finished talking about atmospheric pressure. So, now we have talked about solid pressure, liquid pressure and air pressure. So, now I want you to revise, I want you to recall. So, you can answer passive questions. That is like the best thing that you can do to make sure that you have really learned the lesson. Okay. Now, we come to the next part of the unit. It is about flotation. Sometimes people say, oh, how nice if we could float. Now, when we see an animal like swan floating on water, we feel like how nice it is just floating. So, can it just float? Let us see. Yeah, when you see this type of things, actually you also feel to float, because most of the time we think that floating is effortless. We think that things can just float. We think that this swan is just floating on water. Yeah, or we think that this ship is just floating on water, and most of the time we feel that it is effortless. That is why we feel to float. But at the end of this lesson, you will learn that to float even, there is still something that you have to do. Let us see what it is. Yeah, now we have several questions going on in us, like what? Can these objects just float? So, now you can have your own answer. Now, you can have your own answer. At the end of the lesson, you can check whether what you thought was correct. Is floating effortless? What do they have to do to float in a fluid? So, here we use the word fluid. What does that mean? So, if something can flow, we call it a fluid. So, liquids and gases are fluids because they can flow. Yeah. Do only light objects float? Sometimes we have the feeling, oh, light objects float. Then what about things like ships? They also float. Are they lighter? No, they are like pretty heavy, but still they float on water. Okay. So, we have all these questions now, we have all these doubts and we have this curiosity. Okay. So, after learning this lesson, you can get the answer for all the questions. Okay. Let us find it out. What makes things float or sink? To get an idea about this, you have to do a simple activity. Let us see what the activity is. Okay. You have to take a metal block and hang it on a spring balance. So, by hanging the metal block on the spring balance, we can get the weight of the metal block. So, here I show you an example. You can see that once we hang the metal block on the spring balance, weight of the metal block is 25 Newton. Okay, now let us see what we have to do next. Yeah, now we have to take a displacement can and fill that with water up to the spout. You can see that in the diagram. You can even make one at home. You can improvise this device with the things available at home. So, we take a displacement can and we fill that with water. Now, let us see what we have to do next. Now, what we have to do is, we have to immerse the metal block in water. So, as you immerse the metal block in water, we know that some water goes out of the displacement can. So, we say that water is displaced. Now, this metal block has displaced some water. What else we observe? We observe that there is an apparent decrease in the weight of the metal block. There is an apparent decrease in the weight of the metal block. What was the weight of the metal block earlier? It was 25 Newton. Now, how much? Now is 15 Newton. Has it lost something really? No, it has not lost something. The object is there at it was earlier, but now it shows an apparent decrease in the weight of the object. Earlier it was 25 Newton, now it is 15 Newton. So, let us see the reason. Okay. And now we have to measure the weight of water displaced. Now, we have to measure the weight of water displaced. You know, as we immerse the metal block in water, some water goes out of the displacement can. Now, what we have to do is we can take this water separately and using a spring balance we can measure the weight of the water displaced. So, what will we notice? Yeah, there we notice that that is to 10 Newton. So, do not you find a connection between apparent loss in weight of the object and the weight of water displaced? Now, you think the object was 25 Newton when it was measured at the beginning. Then when it was immersed in water, the weight of that was 15 Newton. So, we observed an apparent decrease of 10 Newton. And also we noticed that weight of water displaced is also 10 Newton. So, then what can we say now? Yeah, so now we notice that apparent loss in the weight is equal to weight of water displaced. So, then why do we observe an apparent loss in weight here? Now, why does the object show a decrease in the weight once immersed in water? So, this is the question that we have now. Okay, let us see what it is. Okay. Now, when we hang the metal block on the spring balance, the metal block pulls the spring balance. Metal block pulls the spring in the spring balance. So, that is why we can get the reading as 25 Newton. Now, what happens as we immerse the block in water? Now, when we immerse the block in water, water applies an upward force on it. Water applies an upward force on it. So, as you think, what should be this upward force? How much should be this upward force? Yeah. So, we can now understand this upward force should be 10 Newton. Okay. Now, once we immerse the metal block in water, we observe an apparent decrease in the weight of the metal block. Yeah, it was 25 Newton at the beginning. Once immersed in water, it was 15 Newton. So, we observe an apparent decrease in the weight of the metal block. So, let us find out the reason for this. Now, as you hang the metal block on the spring balance, the block pulls the spring in it. So, we observe the weight of the metal block. Now, think that you put it into water. Now, the water applies an upward force on the metal block. So, the pulling on the spring decreases. So, that is why we observe an apparent decrease in the weight of the object. Then what should be the size of the upward force acting on the metal block? Yeah, now I think you feel it, that should be 10 Newton. So, where does this 10 Newton come from? Yeah, it comes from water. Yeah. So, what do you call this upward force that water applies on the metal block? You call it upthrust. Yeah. Now, according to the observations that we made in this activity, now we can come to a conclusion. What's the conclusion? The upthrust acting on the metal block is equal to weight of the water displaced by the metal block. Yeah. So, this is what the scientist Archimedes has found. This is what he has discovered. So, what he has discovered? Yeah, we call it Archimedes principle. Let us see his discovery. I think you all now know it. Yeah. So, when an object is fully or partially immersed in a fluid, I have highlighted the word fluid here, because sometimes when we ask the students to write the Archimedes principle, they write water or they write liquid, but that is wrong. You have to write fluid, because this law applies to gases and liquids both. So, commonly we can say that this law applies to fluids. The upthrust acting on it is equal to weight of the fluid displaced by the object. Again I have highlighted weight of the fluid, because there are instances where students write amount of the fluid, volume of the fluid, mass of the fluid. So, definitely it has to be the weight of the fluid. That is why I have highlighted. So, now this is how you need to understand this. Now, when you put an object into a fluid, maybe a liquid or a gas, the fluid applies an upward force on it. What do you call it? You call it upthrust. So, Archimedes has found out that upthrust is equal to weight of the fluid displaced by the object. Now, if you think of a simple example, think that you get an object of 5 Newton. You immerse that in water. You find out that it has displaced 2 newtons of water. Then what should be the upthrust acting on the object? That should be 2 Newton. Yeah. So, now you know that what an object has to do to float in a fluid. Now, we already know that when you immerse an object in a fluid, the fluid applies an upward force on it. You call that the upthrust. Yeah. So, then if an object is to float in a fluid, how much it has to displace? Now, think that the object is 10 Newton. Think that you have put that into water. So, if it is to float in water, how much of water it has to displace? So, you should now feel it. It should displace weight of water equal to itself, because the upthrust acting on it should support the weight of the object, so that it will float in the fluid. Yeah. So, in this way, whenever an object displaces a weight of a fluid equal to itself, it will float in the fluid. Yeah. So, then now you have the idea that floating is not effortless. Now, if an object is to float, still there is something that it has to do. What it has to do? It has to displace a weight of a fluid equal to itself. Now, just think of a ship. Now, it is really heavy, but it is floating on water. But if you take all these materials used to make the ship and make them in the shape of a lump and put it into water, definitely it will sink. But ship has been designed in a way so that it can displace a weight of water equal to itself. That is why it floats. Yeah. So, that is the question that I have given. So, what does an object have to do to float in a fluid? Yeah, we already know to float in a fluid, the object has to displace a weight of water equal to itself. Yeah. Because whenever an object displaces a weight of a fluid equal to itself, the weight of the object will be supported by the upthrust acting on it. Yeah. Now, as we have talked about flotation, as we have identified the requirements of flotation, we can attend to some questions. Yeah, if I recall what we have done, yeah. So, here we learn about flotation. At the beginning you might have the idea that flotation is effortless, but now you are really aware that flotation happens whenever an object displaces a weight of a fluid equal to itself. So, then when it comes to flotation, two things affect. What are the two things which affect? The weight of the object and upthrust acting on it. Yeah. So, the upthrust come from the fluid that the object is immersed in. So, whenever the object displaces the fluid equal to itself, the object will float in the fluid. So, these are the things we have done, and we talk about Archimedes principle, which explains the connection between upthrust and weight of the fluid displaced by an object once it is immersed in a fluid. Yeah, keeping all that in your mind, let us attend to these questions. An object of 7 Newton is immersed in water as shown. Yeah. you can see that this object is 7 Newton and it is immersed in water in a displacement can. You can see in the diagram it has displaced 4 newtons of water. This gives you the idea. Find the upthrust acting on the object. So, I want you to think of the answer now. Yeah, let us see whether this is what you thought. Yeah, upthrust acting on the object is 4 Newton, because we already know the connection between upthrust and the weight of the fluid displaced by the object. Okay, go to the next one. What should be the reading on the spring balance? Yeah, when it is in the air, it reads 7 Newton. Once you put that into water, water applies a force of 4 newtons on it, then what should be the reading on the spring balance? Yeah, see whether this is the answer you thought. Yeah, it should be 3 Newton. Okay, let us go to the next question. I have another question for you. Okay, an object of 7 Newton is immersed in water as shown. Decide whether this object will float or sink in water if released from the spring balance. Okay. Now, we found out earlier that the upthrust on the object is 4 Newton. So, it means now the object has not displaced a weight of water equal to itself. So, what do you think? If you release it, if you just put it into water without connecting it to the spring balance in this way, will it float or sink? Yeah, it will sink. Yeah, check whether what you thought was correct. Okay, let us go to the next question. Yeah, I have taken it from 2018 O-level paper. This was in part 1. This is the question. When a block of wood A is placed in a liquid, it floats with a part immersed. Which of the following is the true statement in relation to this? You can see that in the diagram, there is an object called A and it is immersed in a liquid, it is partially immersed in the liquid. So, these are the choices given. Look at the first choice. The upthrust exerted by the liquid on A is equal to the total weight of A. The second choice, the weight of the fluid displaced by A is equal to weight of the part of A immersed in the liquid. The volume of the liquid displaced by A is equal to total volume of A. The density of A is equal to density of the liquid. Yeah, go through the 4 choices and select the correct one. Yeah, look at the question again. You can see that object is partially immersed in the fluid, but it is floating in the fluid. So, what can you say? Yeah. So, if you have got the first one, that is the correct answer. Yeah. What does it say? The upthrust exerted by the liquid on A is equal to the total weight of A. Now, you see this object is floating. So, it is partially immersed, it is floating. So, upthrust acting on it should be equal to weight of the object. Now, think that if the object is 4 Newton, upthrust should also be 4 Newton. So, in this instance, the object has displaced a liquid having a weight equal to weight of the object. Yeah. So, this is what you have to learn in your unit 15. So, now we have finished our unit 15 through this Gurugetara program. We talk about pressure there, and we talk about solid pressure, we talk about liquid pressure, we talk about air pressure, and we identified the instances where we can make use of them. And finally, in the lesson, we talk about flotation, and there we learn about Archimedes principle. Yeah. So, as we have done it now, what you have to do is to be more familiar with the lesson, you can answer the past paper questions. When you attend to past paper questions only, you really get the idea whether you have learned the lesson or not. So, do it and let us meet up in another lesson. Have a nice day.